Alright guys, the first thing we're going to look at today is preparing a flexible budget. So what you have on the problem that we have in front of us is we have the information for a company that normally produces 20,000 units. This is the budget for the 20,000 units. So that's what we're looking at right now. And you'll find that information, you'll find this information right here at that 20,000 unit mark. It is asking us to prepare a flexible budget for sales volume of 22,000 units. So the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out what the unit costs are going to be on this particular problem so that we know how much we're going to actually do that particular budget for. So in figuring out unit cost, what we're going to do is we would go in and we would divide what we have here, and we would actually divide those numbers. So all of these numbers that you see right here, we would actually go in and divide these numbers by the 20,000 units. And we would do that for all of these different amounts. So for everything we have, we would divide it by the 20,000. We would actually get a per unit cost for what we are looking at. Anything that is listed over here as a variable cost would also, you would have to figure out what your unit cost was. Anything that is listed as a fixed cost, here, here, and here, and then right here, those things that I have along with this fixed overhead here would remain the same because our fixed costs do not change when we increase our actual volume. So the things that have the stars by them, we will not be finding the fixed cost for, or we won't be finding the per unit cost for those items. We will only be looking at those variable items. So for anything that is variable, we will figure out what that per unit cost is. So when we look at this information, what we are going to find here is that our sales is going to have that per unit cost. Let me grab my calculator real quick. So sales, we have the 800,000. We are going to divide it by the 20,000, and that is going to give us a $40 amount. When we look at direct materials, we have 160,000. We need to divide that by the 20,000. That is going to give us, for direct material, we will have an $8 amount. When we look at direct labor, we have 140,000 units. We will divide that by our 20,000 units, and that's going to give us, for direct labor, we actually are going to have $7 per unit. The last thing we have here is that variable overhead, and with variable overhead, we have 100,000. We would divide that by the 20,000, and we end up with $5. So those are those first amounts of what we're going to be looking at. We would then take these amounts, we would multiply those by the new amount, which is the 22,000 here. And so once we go in and we multiply these by those particular units, what we're going to find is that $40 times 22,000 units would be equal to $880,000. $8 times 22,000 units is going to give us $176,000. And then 7 times 22,000 units will equal 154,000. And then for variable overhead, we have 5 times the 22,000 units, and that's going to give us that $11,000. Now, for our fixed overhead amount, that is not going to change. It's still going to be at the $120,000 that we had before. So what we will see here when we are looking at all this, we will find that we do have, these costs are how we figure those out. When we get down to the next section and we're looking at the selling expenses, what you're going to see here for the sales commissions, we do have to figure out what that per rate is. And so if we take the $40,000 and we divide it by the 20,000 units, what we end up with is $2 per unit. So if we take the $2, multiply it by the 22,000 units, we end up with 44,000. Now the other fixed cost, as I said before, like advertising, is just going to stay at the amount that it is at. So it is going to be at 50,000. When we look at our salaries, it says that those are fixed. So for salaries, the amount that we would use for this flexible budget would be at $90,000. And if we looked at rent, because it's all fixed, it would be at $30,000. And depreciation, which is also fixed, would be at $20,000. So these would be the numbers that we would actually use when we were going to go in and prepare a flexible budget. So again, to recap it, the things that we are going to be looking at here is going to be, let me get this all lined up. The things we're going to be looking at here is we're going to be finding what they are on that per unit basis. We do have to look at what our sales value was. So we are looking at that 20,000 units. There's our sales value. We divide it out. We get our per unit cost. Once we get our per unit cost, we then multiply it by our new volume that we are trying to do a flexible budget for, and then those numbers would give us what we need. Fixed cost, we're just using those same amounts that we had in the original budget because those will not change. So hopefully this will help you when you get ready to work any type of flexible budgeting question.